Finally, after a month of preemption and doing the electric slide across your channel guide, AEW Dynamite is back on Wednesday night where it belongs, which means back on Wednesday night live across the Wrestling platforms. It's we who belong. I'm Justin LaBar, back alongside my partner in crime, Alfred Konuwa. Alfred, I'm Justin. Nice to see you again.
Hey, how's it going, buddy? I don't know if you remember me, but we used to do pods years ago.
Years ago. That's what it feels like. Years ago at this point. Back after a month of AEW sliding around on Fridays and on Saturdays, and certainly a need to get the momentum back tonight, as tonight is the last Dynamite of, like you said, the pandemic era as they return to the road next week. So really important for them to have a solid show tonight.
It was important for them to have a solid show, and I don't really want to bury the lead here. Unfortunately, they didn't have the most solid ending. The chat started going crazy about it. That poor guy, Jim Ross, had an unfortunate line to end the show. I mean, Justin, if you could clue people in on this, I'm sure you do better justice than I.
Yeah, I hope you didn't tune out when they went to the video package. They did the big tribute of Daly's place and the highs and the lows, and of course the tragic with the passing of Mr. Brody Lee. So you got the tears. And they come back, and everybody's just AEW live crowd's going crazy. They're pumping. They're going to be in Miami next week. Thank you, Jacksonville, for hosting us this last year. And then JR, check us out next week in Miami. And then all the other cities we're going to, there's nothing else quite like a live WWE Dynamite. And we're off.
Literally the last words you heard of this pivotal era of AEW that they just spent 2 minutes celebrating. Those are the breaks. This was tailor-made for Twitter. Like, I don't know who the guy is who had to tell JR, hey, man, before you check your Twitter, I don't know if you've noticed, but I wouldn't go on Twitter if I was Jim Ross.
And I feel bad because I like JR. I mean, JR's a legend. And it's tough. I mean, the guy is so used to saying WWE for so many years in that live situation. That's just a hard thing. I mean, I get it. I get that. I mean, it happened. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to blame anybody that's going to take the shots on social media because they are. But, I mean, and it's unfortunate. It's not the first time that it's happened. So.
Right. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, this is naturally going to lead to a narrative. Oh, is it time for Jim Ross to go? This, that, and the other. And I will hopefully never be on that side of the fence. I think he brings something very dynamic to AEW, even present day. I even like when he gets grumpy and jumps all over the referees, because it kind of does seem like it's more of a sport with the announcers having the credibility. So I like JR there, but this is what you're going to get. You're going to get the good with the bad with Jim Ross at this stage in his career.
Sure. I mean, and Jericho said it many times. When Dynamite launched, Jericho and Jim Ross were the most recognizable from at least from a global standpoint for pro wrestling. So I mean, JR's got value to him. I mean, his value certainly outweighs a slip up every now and again like that one. And again, they finished the main event match at with 4 minutes still to go in the hour. Yeah. And then they just go to this video package. If for anything for JR, it might be a good thing that a lot of people might have just tuned off. They said, "Oh, we're going to a video package to close this. I'm done." But of course, social media is gonna. If you missed it, social media is gonna make
wake him right back up.
Right, wake you right back up. So, crazy way to end. This was a wild show. We'll take the good with the bad that we'll discuss. But before we get into that, as everybody's still settling in here live on the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching on Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, we appreciate it. As everybody's still coming in, finding their seats. Alfred, let's touch on some of the news that was dominating the headlines today for Wrestling Inc. And you can read more about all of these on Wrestling Inc. But we'll give you the snapshot. Mercedes Martinez reportedly taken to a hospital after her NXT match last night. She was involved in a tag match against Xia Li, and Xia Li just a roundhouse kick, Alfred, that looked like it connected right behind the ear of Mercedes Martinez. She had an awkward fall. One of those awkward fall, it didn't look like your typical take a bump. It looked like a stunned, not just got my lights knocked out fall. But Fightful is reporting that she did, in fact, got checked out when she got backstage, and then they did send her to a local hospital. At this point, I don't think we've heard anything more. So hopefully Mercedes Martinez, nothing too serious.
Yeah, and that was a very scary spot when it happened. It was one of those things where you instantly knew something was wrong just based on how she just face planted, how they just cut away from her on the ground. She kind of tensed up when she was being pinned. And it was just a mistake. And we were talking about it last night on the Wrestling Pod and just how scary of a spot that was. So I'm just glad that she's doing okay. But you could tell something went wrong because obviously they just had to stop that match without there really being a true finish. But just good to hear that hopefully she's on the mend now.
Absolutely. So we'll keep our ears and eyes out for any update we might get there. Sticking in the WWE world, This and down in Florida specifically at the training center, Sasha Banks and others, as we're finding out from Fightful Select, Alfred, that they're going to be doing some mandatory training at the Performance Center. This comes just a day after we were learning that Vince McMahon, is going to be at the Performance Center tomorrow, Thursday. Supposedly scouting and taking a look at, what's his future look like in terms of talent. And this is notable, Alfred, because I mean, first off, mandatory training at the Performance Center. I mean, we've heard about them sending, big guys back to learn the different things of the WWE style. But mandatory training, and Sasha Banks is a name we're finding that's attending, and we haven't seen her since WrestleMania. Sasha Banks, who main evented at WrestleMania, you're going to mandatory training. I'm not sure what that means. And then Vince at the Performance Center. That Performance Center has been around for over 5 years, Alfred. And we really haven't ever caught pictures or WWE 24 documentary footage showing Vince at the Performance Center. So this doesn't seem like it's a regular stop in his route.
No, not at all. And the way I kind of saw it, just based on the timing, the fact that it's an all hands on deck type setup, I really think that this is going to be Vince and the WWE officials training all the WWE superstars how, in terms of to work with the crowds back, like what they want to emphasize. There's a lot of things over this past year that they haven't had to worry about in terms of a wrestling match because it's been silent. But there are definitely things that Vince McMahon likes people to do in arenas with fans, and he's very particular about them. So I'm sure that this is going to come up in terms of, hey, when you're in a headlock, make sure you hold on for longer, whatever the stuff that he likes to do to get fans into a match. So I think this is going to be much of here is a reminder or a refresher of how to work in front of a live crowd.
I think that's a great point. That is a really good point, considering the timing and considering that it's been the longest ever that WWE's not been in front of an audience regularly. And yeah, I guess where's a place that you can gather everybody rather than have to worry about what roster's at TV Monday, what roster's at TV Friday. Send everybody, get everybody to the Performance Center, and just have a big kind of a big meeting. And so that very well might be it. Of course, then coupling it with the draft coming up at the end of the summer. Of course, we're expecting a new crop of talents to appear on Raw or SmackDown. So again, maybe part of that process of looking to see who he wants to have involved in that draft. First super chat of the night, Jody Shauna Jenkins, $5 Canadian. I'm sure it's the fans being back, but AEW seems really good right now. It also seems not as overproduced as WWE. Plus, Miro would kill Roman Reigns right now. I mean, AEW certainly, as we'll talk about here at length in a moment, it's got a ton of energy. You can never deny how much energy is behind the shows, and the crowd obviously amplifies that. Depending on what depending on what the definition, Alfred, is of overproduced, they let the guys and girls kind of speak for themselves. But I mean, you can certainly make a case that there's some, maybe not overproduced, maybe overbooked segments in these shows. Certainly, I got to feel like AEW feels like they got more bullets than they can hold in the chamber, that they have probably are just ready to start unloading things now that they got this crowd back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the downfall of AEW is the fact that they do so much and they try to fit so much into one show. But I think that is also part of what makes it so great in terms of it having all this energy. But a big part of that has been over the past month, these live fans coming back and just the passion they've shown. And what I like about the crowd at this point in time is that these AEW crowds don't tend to go into business for themselves. They tend to cheer for the right guys. That match with Jungle Boy last week, I think, was a perfect example in that you knew AEW is trying to get Jungle Boy up and running. And even though he was a big underdog in this match, if the crowd got behind him, it would be a better match. It would make Jungle Boy come off as a bigger star. And that's exactly what happened. They really gravitated toward Jungle Boy. You did have the Kenny Omega fans there still, but I feel like these crowds are really good at being wrestling crowds that are portraying what the company wants them to portray. They're in step with AEW, and I think that's what makes them separate from WWE right now.
It's definitely a separation. I'll be curious to see. I mean, obviously Dynamite only had I guess about a little less than 6 months on the road before the pandemic stop that. I'll be curious to see when we start getting, when they go to New York in September. New York, known for being a crowd that likes to, that whole New York, Philly, Jersey, Turnpike region. They love to, they love to be the star. So it'll be interesting to see, do they ever encounter any of that, or again, is the product in tune enough with what that fan base wants? Will we see Beach Ball? It's really curious to see what is it. Because we've talked about this before with AEW. Right now, everything you hear, at least on the record from anybody that's about AEW is sunshine and roses, right? But eventually, when talent get let go and contracts run up and creative disputes happen and guys and girls go the separate way, that's when you're going to start to hear the flip side of somebody's grievance. no matter how truthful or untruthful it is, it'll be their account of things. And so, like, there's still even though it's been since October 2019, there's still a new car smell on AEW and AEW Dynamite. So I'll be curious when that smell starts to fade and when the beach balls come out, when the unruly chants come out, when the shoot interviews start.
Yeah, and we're gonna get that right around the time, like the 5-year mark, when a lot of these contracts start being up and they, kind of switch sides. We're gonna get that, especially because right now we're also in a time where a lot of WWE guys are going to AEW. But I think once that script flips and you get the other side of that with people jumping ship to WWE, that's when you're going to get the blended waters of people now from AEW having stories about it. No, it's really not so great there. Wait till you hear these Tony Khan stories, brother. So we'll get it. And trust me, the honeymoon period. And we've kind of seen glimpses of it, actually. Maybe not so much with the live fans, but with a couple of these disasters that AEW has had in terms of the ending with the explosion, the Jericho fall. I mean, in terms of the vitriol that comes with that, I mean, it's out there, it's bubbling, and it's hungry.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can see it, bro. I can see it now. The first big person that jumps shit from AEW, they walk out on a live Monday Night Raw, Jaguars jersey on, they rip that Jaguars shirt. It's all gonna be there.
Oh, we're gonna get petty, and I love it. I love it.
Tom Petty. The New Day. So there's the 5 episodes that were on Peacock on the WWE Network of WWE's 50 greatest tag teams. And of course, a lot of tag teams, featured the Outsiders, Doom, the Koloffs, Sting and Lex Luger, the Freebirds, Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, Hollywood Blondes, Harlem Heat. But edging out at number 1 is the New Day. You good with this? You good with this?
I love it. And I love this documentary, by the way. I haven't seen the last 2 parts because I believe those just recently came out, but I did see the first 3. And again, I think Breezango was so good hosting this, and it'll be so sad to just watch them knowing that they're not with the company anymore. But this is a very good series. I know a lot of people might argue for the classics. I grew up an LOD/Road Warriors guy, love the Road Warriors, and Demolition, which is not, I don't think, like a top 5, top 10, but there's going to be a lot of these classic tag teams. But I absolutely think that I have no problem with New Day being the best WWE tag team of all time. We're not saying in all of professional wrestling, but in this company, I actually think it's a bit of a slight to the New Day to only refer to them as a tag team, because they just mean so much more in terms of just the reach that they've had and the entertainment value. And I like this. I really do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, New Day is so impressive. Again, they've remained over. They've been a babyface several times. They've had a heel incarnation several times. Constantly remain over, and have reinvented themselves while still staying in the identity of the New Day. New catchphrases, new shticks that they ride in and out of. And it's for how long? It's been over 5 years. That is an eternity in today's WWE world, when there's 6-7 hours of live program every week, a pay-per-view every 4 weeks. I mean, that's insane that they have remained together, and WWE has been able to avoid the classic who's going to stab who in the back.
Yeah, and you also have to consider the fact that what makes them dynamic as well is that they spin off world title contenders from this tag team. Like, they started as a mid-card commit tag team, and they just got so undeniable that now Kofi Kingston's been WWE champion. I have Big E as my favorite to win Money in the Bank, and maybe they'll do something screwy with Drew, but I think it's only a matter of time before Big E goes to Raw and vies for world championships. So that's something that pretty much 98% of those teams on that list can't say, that they spun off multiple world title contenders.
Absolutely. And our final headline news story before we move ourselves into AEW's Dynamite tonight. Busted Open Radio on SiriusXM. Cheap plug. I'm on there every Friday at 10 a.m. You can listen live or on demand or the podcast. But today it was Bully Ray as one of the co-hosts, and Bully Ray, they had Tony Khan on at today's show. And they talked to Tony Khan, talked that. But prior to getting to Tony Khan, they did talk some AEW, and Bully Ray got into some comments about Eddie Kingston, noting Eddie Kingston's taking some shots at WWE in a promo recently on AEW programming. And Bully had a lot to say. Bully, we'll read the quotes here. He does say he loves Eddie Kingston to death. He puts over Eddie Kingston. He says, if we were having promo wars and I was the captain of the team and somebody says you got to pick one person to do a promo for you, I'd most likely pick Eddie because of his believability, his tone, his inflection, and everything about him. He goes, but in this case, Eddie needs to shut the F up and stay in his lane. And his lane is an AEW guy speaking about AEW and flying the flag for AEW. Then I'm completely on board. Tell me how great AEW is. Fly the flag for your company. Show me that you wear your heart on your sleeve. He goes on to say, you were an indie guy for the majority of his career until this company took a chance on you. You've learned to love it and everything about it. Don't take the easy way out and knock the WWE. If Cody wants to destroy a throne, I get it. If Jericho wants to say F you, I get it. But Eddie, why? There's no reason for him to say that. So this really grabbed me headlines. I mean, Bully Ray was trending today, Alfred, and really the portion of that I read that really grabbed the attention. The line that everybody picked up on was, shut the F up and stay in your lane.
I absolutely love this. This is part of the beauty of having these kind of pro wrestling wars. And I think Bully Ray, I love that Bully Ray is stepping up or whatnot and having something to say. But the fact that he's saying, stay in your lane, you shouldn't be able to talk about WWE. I don't necessarily agree with that, because when we look back on all of this, there is going to be a lot of interest in the narrative of what was AEW versus WWE like. Not only was there a Monday Night Wars DVD, they made one of the first things they did on WWE Network was like an 8 to 10 part docuseries on the Monday Night Wars, just kind of chronicling that. So the back and forth between these wrestling companies from an in-ring standpoint of who's got the better product and from an out of the ring standpoint of, various wrestlers getting in spats, I think is going to enhance this. And as long as it doesn't get violent and nobody pulls up on anybody, this doesn't turn into gang wars, I'm all for this.
Well, like I always say, it's already like the Anchorman news team gang wars with with the interference and affiliations. But interesting comments. I mean, I think you could see each side of the argument. I think, to your point, that's always just kind of been the fun of when you have viable competition. Nobody ever really in the last 15 years ever really took it seriously. WWE obviously never acknowledged TNA and Impact until just recently in the last couple of years, where they've used, images and video archive. But they never acknowledged, when Christian and Mick Foley and Booker T and Kurt Angle all were there. I think they, and then when Impact and TNA would try to, I think we all just kind of laugh. We're like, you're just not at that level. But I think there is more of an equal interpretation. There is more of an equal looking interpretation because of AEW, the distribution they have of being on TNT, and the success they've just had with their numbers, not being far off of what WWE's numbers are. And I'm speaking of Raw and SmackDown, not NXT. Yeah. So, I think there's fun in having the shots go. I mean, look, and Bully comes from ECW, the original ECW, which so much of their attitude was built on WWE, WCW, F the man, but
great point.
But at the same point, if you want to analyze Eddie Kingston's character, the character on AEW TV, I can see Bully's point being like, that doesn't make sense. Eddie, you're not a guy that, you're not a guy that I just saw on WWE programming that I thought was getting misused. So so each their own, but it was definitely go check out Busted Open after you finish our podcast here. It was definitely an interesting one. They had Tony Khan on, and Bully even actually started asking Tony about, like, do you see the issues with your referees and your lack of rules? And I mean, Tony just kind of disagreed, kind of no-sold the criticism. So
I love the idea of taking Tony Khan to wrestler's court every week to where he's publicly held accountable for his booking. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah. No, look, props to Tony Khan for having the, I mean, he's a billionaire. He doesn't have to. He could just say no, but he goes on once or twice a week and is willing to, I mean, props to him. I mean, like I said, he didn't really answer anything. He didn't really go deep into it, but at least he made himself available for the questions, I guess. So
right.
All right.
Let's say really quickly. Part of me wants also AEW to like awake the sleeping giant that is WWE, because if Bully Ray is talking like this, a lot of people in WWE are not happy with these comments that Eddie Kingston made, and a part of me wants it to manifest itself in the thing. Oh, you guys think you're hot right now? Like, we have the talent and the money to do this better than anybody in the world, which they do. And if they choose to, hopefully, if they know the answer, they can. And I want that to happen sooner rather than later.
Well, we all want the sleeping giant WWE to be awoken and to give us better content. I think we all have this sense of optimism that we're going to get it once they're back in front of fans. We'll see how long that honeymoon period lasts. But, I don't know. I think about things like Bruce Pritchard said and such a lot in reflection over the years, a guy that was right there with Vince in the trenches during the Monday Night Wars. And like they've even said if they could do it again, they would not have done the Huckster and Nacho and Billionaire Ted. They wouldn't have just even acknowledged, because in a lot of ways it gave WCW far more credibility than it needed to at a certain time. So we'll see. All right, let's get into Dynamite. Last Dynamite of the pandemic era here at Daly's Place. They're, of course, going to be in Miami starting next week. So they're hyping that up all night long. But we kick the show off after Jericho joins the commentary desk. We got Eddie Kingston and Penta up against the Young Bucks here. This is exactly the kind of match you'd expect with these four individuals. But when it comes down to the meat and potatoes, towards the ending here, Alfred, is we have Gallows and Anderson. They're out there. They end up causing a distraction, but their distraction doesn't do any good. Brandon Cutler accidentally sprays the Bucks in the eyes. He missed Kingston and Penta. Then Kazarian, he appears. He takes out Cutler. Ultimately, Penta and Kingston get the victory over the Young Bucks. So somewhat of an upset here to kick off this AEW Dynamite tag match.
And they did a tremendous job of building up this babyface challenging team as a viable threat to the Young Bucks, because there was a mistake in this match. And I don't want to sound like an apologist because it seemed like a legitimate mistake, but the referee counted 3 when the Young Bucks were supposed to kick out. But everybody played their parts brilliantly in this. And not only did they get that visual pinfall, which incited a "that was 3" chant, but then they beat the Young Bucks about as clean as you can beat anybody. So they really kind of came out of here like, wow, when it's fair, these guys can actually beat the Young Bucks. It was very overwhelming in this match. And I just love the Young Bucks heel work, just with those Fu Manchu mustaches now. They just add one little thing and it makes them 10 times more obnoxious. And they're so good at just kind of needling you, but at the same time being really obnoxious about it. So, they were great heels in this match. And I think the right guys won.
Yeah, I agree with this outcome. I'm good with it. Again, and this can be the story of the whole show. Just a lot of shenanigans at all points. Yeah. Nothing is just kept to let it be those inside the ring, but we'll get more to that. But I will say, I like the choice for Penta and Kingston to win. And to your point about the Bucks as heels, I haven't got to talk about AEW in like a month because we haven't done the Wednesday nights here. But really, their heel work, it really has grown on me. When months ago when we saw them shifting into being heels, with the whole stuff with Callis and Kenny, I really shook my head, just kind of going like, you're the Young Bucks and the style you work and how over yours face is like, is this really necessary, dude? Like, are we already dried up on the babyface booking right now of the roster? We feel like you need to go, I didn't get it. I was really skeptical, but it's really winning me over. Cause you're right. They work. So again, you look at them, and I'm like, oh, this is baby faces for life, but they really do work a really good heel gimmick when they're committed to it. And you're right, they do some little touches in their appearance and in their shenanigans of how they act. You
and I were both very confused by this Young Bucks heel turn when it first happened. I remember being so against it because I felt like they were getting off the beaten path, and they had a couple of false starts before, so I just felt like these characters were getting lost. And I mean, props to them for really rallying, because that's what they've done. Kind of like you, every week I've liked this gimmick more, and now I'm a lot more into it.
For sure. So that was our opening match. We get a backstage promo. Christian's talking to Jungle Boy, putting over Jungle Boy, how impressed he's been with his performance. Talks about how he's going to have Jungle Boy's back. That'll come into relevance here in a few moments. We also get Ethan Page. He's in ring doing a promo, all about cutting down Darby, talking about their coffin match that's supposed to be next week. At this moment, he's talking about how he's going to close that coffin on Darby's self-confidence and career. Cue the lights go out. Here comes Sting. Sting's dragging a coffin to the ring. Out pops Darby. So Darby goes at it. He really gets the better of Ethan. And then Page now is to the outside. He's pissed. He's on the microphone. And now he says this match is not going to happen next week. He says you're going to sign you're always trying to get an unfair advantage, and basically tells Darby that Darby's going to have to sign some papers and keep his hands off of Ethan. If he can do that, then maybe they'll do the match a few weeks later at Fyter Fest. So I'm guessing, Alfred, this was done. I'm guessing they're looking at their booking and realizing as they're trying to spread out some of these marquee matches over this return tour to the road. I'm guessing they just realized they already have enough for next week and they need to move this somewhere else.
Sure, but I mean, the last thing they want to be doing really is rescheduling, given how many shows that they have to promote that they, are kind of putting over right now, and that they've got, the Road Rager and just a couple of shows that they're doing when they're coming back on the road. They like to book in advance, and to just kind of change this up again, you kind of lose track of when these matches are going to happen. But, I really liked Ethan Page in this. I think, Ethan Page is kind of an unsung hero in AEW, where there's a lot of guys in AEW who get a lot of deserved praise, but he's a guy who I would keep an eye on in terms of somebody who's kind of bubbling up as a very good performer. There were a couple of issues with the promo, I guess, audio-wise or whatnot, and fans like really getting into it in terms of chanting against him. And I thought he handled it really well in terms of being on the fly and responding to that live environment. Yeah,
Ethan, he's very in control of the character and gimmick that he's playing. I think that Darby's a great opponent for him. It's just such a great yin and yang.
Yeah.
What I'll be watching from what I had seen of Ethan prior to his arrival in AEW, what I'll be watching is to make sure he doesn't become too much of a duplicate of an MJF, because his character and MJF's character, there's a lot of similar fabrics. So it'll be really be watching to see like how we differentiate the two, especially more so Ethan, because MJF obviously is higher up on the pecking order for AEW. So
that is very true.
We get Jungle Boy versus Jack Evans. This is a pretty straightforward, quick match. Jungle Boy wins with submission. After that, though, we then see the office of Matt Hardy starting to make it to the ring, but then here comes help to defend on Jungle Boy, and ultimately Matt Hardy and Christian are fisticuffs. It's WWE 2001 all over. It's great stuff here. As we got Matt Hardy and Christian fighting, and again, look, I just can we just let a match be a match? Like I don't. This is my biggest problem. And to a point, it's like, yeah, there's a lot going on, so it's you always want to stay engaged, and we certainly don't want it to get as flat and sterile and recycled as we see like Monday Night Raw can be. But oof, I mean, I'm just keep waiting. I'm like, all right, this is gonna be the match. This is the match. It's just gonna Jungle Boy's gonna win, and that's gonna be that. And nope.
I'm the opposite, and I think it's really hurting the show in terms of creating a fatigue, because I'm just thinking like, okay, when is the outside interference going to happen in this match? And like even leading up to the main event, like not to get ahead of ourselves, but it got so good where even at that point, I'm like, man, they're going to have outside interference for a match like this? And, sure enough, they did. So, it's really starting to get a little frustrated when you continue to see the same type of outside interference in every single match. Then it kind of compromises the match for a promotion that really tries to treat itself like a real sport. And they put so much emphasis on wins tonight. And, he's got his 50th wins. And it's like, well, what is a win really when there's all this outside interference? Who's winning these matches exactly?
True, but I will say this. I got to give AEW the credit, too, on the wins with, they really do. It is nice, and they touched on it with MJF later when they get to the main event, where they said something like, MJF he's only lost one singles match his entire career at AEW, which is a year, and that I do think I'm like, it is pretty cool that they are able to preserve those kind of stats. It does help make matches like tonight's match with MJF and Sammy be even bigger than what it is. So I'll give them that credit. They find a way, and MJF's only lost once, but I feel like people have gotten the better of him. He has put other guys over. So to AEW's credit, they have managed to, I think, make the records work in their favor for how we're presenting this person. And yes, this person's a big deal. So,
yeah, and I just want to be clear that I absolutely and 100% with that. Might be my favorite thing about AEW is just how much they focus on wins and records and whatnot. It's just that, so I think it puts more of an onus to have more often than not the matches be fair if it's going to kind of simulate a real sport. Otherwise, it does become kind of a cartoon.
So we get an MJF pre-tape promo. He's talking about Chris Jericho and just, Jericho used to be one of the best, but now he's just not cool anymore. He's making AEW his own Looney Tune place. He starts listening to some of the things that Jericho's done to him. He says next week, MJF says he's going to reveal the stipulation that if Jericho wants one more match with them, he has to accept these stipulations. And the deal being that once they have that match, when MJF wins, Jericho leaves him alone. So, setting up the possibility that we finally see the complete end of this feud, and these two will move on. We'll wait and see. But then he starts to pivot, and he puts over his match tonight with Sammy Guevara as the main event. And I really like this portion of the promo from MJF. What he says about Sammy is he talks about how, Sammy, I'm gonna beat you. And you know what? After I beat you, everybody's going to be still saying that you are the future because I'm the now. And I just thought it was a good line. It puts over, it puts Sammy over, puts his opponent over, which is, ultimately that wrestling 101 of what you want to do. You don't want to bury your opponent. You want to give people a reason to tune in, but still MJF is the heel, getting himself over as well. I thought this was a really good piece of work by him.
Very good. Yeah. I mean, nobody cuts great. And I'm not just talking, very good. Nobody cuts truly great promos on a more consistent basis than MJF. It's just it's almost when you think that he can't top himself, he finds a way to do so. So I thought this was very, very good.
El Idolo, he makes does his interview, and we find out that he's going to have his in-ring debut at AEW against Matt Sydal, Matt somebody, as he refers to him, Matt somebody, next week in Miami, the city of Scarface, I believe he even referred to it.
This is a wild I love that he got this in Spanish, but you're just reading the subtitles. You're like, oh my God, this is wild. Yeah. So, that's kind of a funny juxtaposition, is that he's, maybe speaking a language that some other portions of the audience can't understand. But when they read those subtitles, you're just like, okay, now you got my attention, buddy.
Yeah, so another reason to, again, I always give you a reason to tune in next week. So his in-ring debut in AEW against Matt Sydal, that obviously
Looking forward to it.
Just the two guys and their athleticism alone, you're like, okay, this is a fresh matchup. I've never seen. I don't know if they've ever worked somewhere else in the world, but I've never seen this. So certainly looking forward to seeing that. Another promo, Kenny Omega in the ring with Tony Schiavone. Schiavone's out there for a lot of these interviews, and then the wrestlers just take the mic and shove him aside.
Yeah, happens almost every time.
Yeah. Omega's out there. And he basically says that he goes through all the different people that he's beaten, and he says there's nobody else in the ranks. I'm done. So I'm going to take a little break from AEW. I got plenty of other titles and other promotions. I'm going to go defend those there. Then he's interrupted by Evil Uno and the Dark Order, who they come out, and of course, Omega notes, you guys aren't in my league. They admit they don't have the ranking and wins to qualify to be world title #1 contenders, but they start alluding to somebody who is, and they never say him by name, but of course they're alluding to Hangman Adam Page, and they never, again, nobody says him by name, and Omega responds with, if you're talking about who I think, that person doesn't have the guts to do it. That person knows that they can't beat me. So leave a little cliffhanger here. There's going to be more of that, but just on this promo, Alfred, what'd you make of this with this Kenny Omega saying he's all done, but then Dark Order standing up for Hangman Page?
Yeah, kind of similar in terms of the promo to something I saw on Friday with another dominant champion who said he was going to be done and then got interrupted. But I don't want to say he was ripping anybody off, but I thought this was a fantastic segment in what it accomplished, in that you are now establishing the next challenger who you could foresee a month or two out, maybe at that Flushing Gardens show, at a big show. They're going to do this Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page match. What I love about Hangman Adam Page as a challenger is that Kenny Omega is doing this OP gimmick. He's got every belt, every match he goes into that's a world title match. You just know, because, all the information we get on our side, got this belt, got all these big plans. There's no way Kenny's losing here. But this is not going to be that type of match. I could very much see Hangman Adam Page beating Kenny Omega, and how they built Hangman Adam Page tonight, as we're going to get into, was very, very good in terms of getting these people ready to see Hangman Adam Page possibly win that world title.
So we talked about heel Young Bucks earlier, and now we'll talk about heel Kenny Omega. Did you catch the social media split screens and memes of Kenny Omega rocking the 2005 Triple H?
I saw a couple of those, yeah. He had it in full of the mutton chops.
Yes, yes, exactly. So there's more to the Hangman Page story that we'll get to here in a moment once that comes up. We get back to some action, though. This being, actually, I think this is the only match that does not have any Goo or Gaga, and this is the TNT title match. Miro defending the title up against Flying Brian Pillman Jr. Brian gets a little bit of offense in there. Miro sells for him. So that looks good, but Miro locks in that game over submission, and Brian just passes out. Miro, man, what a difference a few months makes, huh?
Absolutely. And I love that this is the third dominant champion of pro wrestling. And I'm all for this trend. In MMA and UFC, there are at any given moment maybe 5 or 6 dominant guys who are just clearing out their divisions, and it leads to a lot of discussion about pound for pound who's the best. And I hope that we get into this era where there's more and more of these dominant champions, and you're talking about, okay, there was a comment in the super chat earlier saying, Miro would destroy Roman Reigns. That's kind of like a pound for pound type argument. And I just like that they're really building this guy up. His new theme music is so perfect, because that was the only thing that irked me about Miro in this whole transition, is that he had this "I'm the best man." It was kind of comedy theme music, but this was just this really epic, like, you're going to get used to hearing this, knowing that Miro's going to go in there and kill somebody. And this is the perfect tone. And so I loved it. Yeah,
everything's starting to click now. That music they got, his presentation, how he looks, he's got the crazy eyes. This is, and I like the fact, obviously they brought him in and he was associated with Kip and Penelope. I like the fact that he's by himself.
Yeah.
For a while, Hangman Adam Page was that guy, and now he's being like linked with the Dark Order as like a buddy cop kind of thing there. I like the fact that like Miro now is the man who's on his own island, and he's holding one of their titles. I love that.
God's favorite champion.
God's favorite champion. That's right. And back to Hangman Page, we catch backstage. He comes barging into the Dark Order's suite, dressing room area, and he's pissed that they were speaking on his behalf. And basically Dark Order saying, Alfred, stop being afraid of failure. We know you can do this. We believe in you. You need to start believing in yourself. I like the message. I like the story of what we're doing here and how we're building to, like, everybody knows that Hangman Page is capable of being, our leader and being our flag holding guy, but he just needs to find himself again. I love what we're doing. I thought the execution and I thought the cheesiness of this promo was hard to ignore. I was like, this is super cheesy.
It was very cheesy in the way they did it. And I think they were playing it that way to kind of play the irony that is the AEW fan base, because these fans did gobble it up. And when they had that home run line, like, your time is now, those people, kind of came unglued for the Hangman Adam Page push. But yes, that's exactly what this was in terms of, like, it had an after school special vibe to it. That's all I could think about is that, no, come on, Jimmy, you can do it. You can beat that bully. it was like little kids on the playground. But I think they did play it off.
The after school special that as all the motivational as all the motivational dorks that are the misfits in Dark Order have given him the go get him words. We believe in you. Walks off the after school special where he then swigs the whiskey.
This is brought to you by Jim Beam.
Right. Oh man. All right, another promo backstage. Taz only with Hook and Hobbs, noting how it has just become a toxic Team Taz with the problems between Starks and Brian Cage, and once again another match being set up for this return tour to the road. This one being July 14th. We're gonna see Starks versus Cage. The FTW title is gonna be on the line. Noting that and families sometimes they just need to have a fight. Family members do just to go ahead and clean this whole thing up. So that's one of those events. That July 14th event's gonna be in Texas. Ricky Starks from Texas, I believe. So obviously some promotional logic there. Where do you think we're going? I mean, obviously somebody's defecting here from Team Taz. What are you seeing?
Sure. I mean, I see Brian Cage being the guy. I mean, if he's gonna defend this FTW title, this is the most fitting way to defend it. If it means anything, I guess it would mean something to Taz and his crew. So maybe it should be kept within them. But I do not see him retaining this. I see Ricky Starks winning this title as part of Brian Cage being kicked out of this faction.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, the FTW title has to remain with Team Taz. So right,
yes.
that would seem almost seem like Taz has decided he wants Starks to remain. Team Taz is going to make sure that Starks wins this title. And yeah, Brian Cage, again, now I guess he will be one maybe who's a loner, who's off getting his own booking. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. All right, we get a tag match, a women's tag match here. Several things to unpack out of this. We get Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero up against Rebel and Britt Baker. First off, Britt and Rebel are still positioned and booked in this match like they're the heels, kinda, but clearly the crowd favorites. So that was the first kind of thing to, again, trying to get used to.
1,000%. That, I mean, her days as a heel, they better start planning for her babyface run, because these people will not let her be a babyface. It was very awkward watching them act like heels, just knowing how overwhelming the fan was in her corner.
Well, and look, they're going to be here in Pittsburgh in August. They're going to be doing. They're actually doing to do two. They're going to do Dynamite on Wednesday, and then they're going to stay here in Pittsburgh, and they're going to do the very first Rampage on Friday here in Pittsburgh. So I have to think, obviously Pittsburgh is where Britt's from. Her whole shtick, she even when she was here, she did the Britsburg thing. I got to think by that point they have to know we have to position her and acknowledge her as a face by that point.
Right. And that'll maximize those reactions. And even by the end of this match, it kind of felt like they're kind of headed in that direction to make Britt Baker the babyface, maybe even of this feud. Yeah,
and I don't think this was intentional. This was not supposed to happen, but Britt ends up basically being handicapped at the end here. So as we go through the match, there's a spot where Nyla Rose, I believe it was Nyla pins Britt. 1, 2. Rebel comes flying in and breaks the count up, and I was watching her. I watched this happen, and she breaks the count up, and then she kind of just lays on the ground on the mat, and she just kind of freezes, and her face is still up. She's looking at the camera. She's looking off at a ringside person, and it just kind of looked like maybe she wrenched her back or something. All she did was come in and just give like a little light double axe handle just to fall and then to break the count up. But it almost looked like she might have moved and just wrenched her back, because then she proceeded to lay on her stomach in the ring and slid just sliding slowly to get out of the ring, out of the way. Slides onto the ramp, and she did not move out of the position. They had, they kind of kept it blocked out of the camera shot, but every now and again you could catch the background of a shot. They had doctors and ringside people there attending to her. I was reading Britt's lips. I could see Britt was trying to figure out what she's doing. Is she okay? Britt ends up getting the win when she puts the lockjaw on Vicky, of all people. So she gets the win there. But then after the match, Nyla Rose and Vicky attack Britt, who, again, all by herself at this point, and they power bomb her from the apron through a table. So this spot looks pretty vicious. And again, Britt's on her own. So now all of a sudden, now she looks like the babyface.
Yeah, exactly. And, I didn't know that all that stuff. I mean, something did seem off definitely through the finish of that match as it was going to the end. But I didn't know all that was going on in terms of Rebel and whatnot. It did just seem like they're kind of starting to make the transition. But, maybe this was just a happy accident in that it did seem like by the end of this match that Nyla Rose was a clear heel, just power bombing there. And she even kind of played that up when people were booing her. She was sneering at these fans. And I don't even think Nyla Rose, for all intents and purposes, was supposed to be the babyface of this feud because she's with Vicky Guerrero. I think this is just one of those weird heel versus heel feuds where one heel is going to get cheered. But, I mean, you just might as well go all the way with Britt Baker as a babyface because she's really over right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for giving any segment screen time to Britt and Rebel, but as a whole, this match was just not a really good match. It broke down, was pretty sloppy overall. But again, if you're just trying to get victories and again, prime Britt's act up for being the babyface thing, that's fine. But hopefully Rebel's okay. We'll keep our eye on Wrestling Inc. for any updates there. All right, it's main event time. Sammy Guevara versus MJF. These two guys have been with Dynamite from the very beginning. Noting even Sammy was in the very first match on the very first Dynamite ever in October 2019. So really a good homegrown main event here of young star. I mean, both these guys in their early 20s, and they are on the top of the card main eventing. And this match, kind of opens tit for tat. They're really avoiding any kind of big moves from each other. So feeling each other out, getting the crowd's applause. MJF, get some eye pokes, get some heat going on for a little bit. Then things really start to pick up. Sammy does a springboard into a Canadian Destroyer, which is just absolutely incredible looking, incredible visual. If you go find that one. Eventually, MJF gets launched into the second row. Sammy dives to the top of the rope into the crowd on MJF. Then we start getting a little nuts in terms of okay, let's wrap this one up. MJF hits a tombstone pile driver from the second rope.
Second rope.
1, 2, nope. Then we get Sammy up on the top rope. MJF's begging, don't do it, don't do it. Sammy hits his 630 senton. Surely this one's it. If you're going to top a tombstone, certainly you're going to just patent one of his finishers, right? And make that be it. 1, 2, nope. Still kick out. Here comes Shawn Spears. Jericho on commentary. He's not going to have any of that. So Jericho gets up to try to cut Spears off the pass. Wardlow comes out of nowhere. He beats up Jericho. He tosses Jericho from the bleacher area into the ringside area. It looked like Jericho actually really did land awkwardly because he was being attended to for the remainder of the show by doctors. But then as all these shenanigans are going on, Spears grabs a chair and does a headshot. We don't see chair shots to the head much anymore. Does a chair shot to the head to Sammy. 1, 2, 3. MJF gets the pin. This was a super entertaining, Alfred. But I have a real problem with a move that almost paralyzed Stone Cold Steve Austin. A move that was so well protected by one of the greatest characters, if not the greatest ever, in The Undertaker, that we're going to do this off the second rope. And that's not even our last false finish.
Yeah. Everything past that point became self-indulgent for this match in terms of I enjoyed this match. It was a great match. It was a spectacle. These fans were into it. I'm going to go back and rewatch it. I thought this was a truly good match. But the fact that these guys started to kick out of the stuff that they did, my literal reaction was, come on. And you really shouldn't be saying that when you're watching wrestling. You really want to suspend that disbelief. But you're right. You take of any finisher to kick out. You take the deadliest finisher. I mean, if you're going to rank finishers, if WWE had a top 50 finishers list, which I believe they have, I think you got to put this tombstone up as number 1. You take that finisher and you go to the second rope and the guy kicks out of it. From there, it's like you're pretty much exposing that this is not like, I appreciate what you guys are doing, but this is an exhibition from this point on.
Right. Now, yeah. And I let it slide here in the recap that I didn't even note that, they do the Canadian Destroyer and they do a 1-2 kick out from that. And mind you, the Canadian Destroyer, I still remember the first time I ever saw that move be done. 15 years or whatever. Like, that still to this day is one of those moves. The Canadian Destroyer is one of those moves. I remember the first time I saw it and I went, that is incredible looking. And that could be that should be a one and done. You hit, because a pile driver by nature, a traditional pile driver looks, the Jerry Lawler pile driver looks brutal. So to do a Canadian Destroyer pile driver looks brutal. That move and the move that Mr. Kennedy would do as his finisher. The first time I saw him on like WWE like Velocity do his Lambo leap with like I think it was Funaki. I remember going, whoa! It's that forward fireman's carry from the second rope, and I remember the crowd going, whoa. So, like, when I saw this springboard into the Canadian Destroyer, I was like, and then there was the 1-2 kick out. I did say to myself, man, that's like where are we in the match that they just kicked out of that? And then he jumps into the crowd on the MJF, and yeah, I don't know, like the kicking out of the pile driver. That's just that. You're right. Everything after that just kind of like we're in training with the crash pads around. Hey, let me show you what I can do.
Yeah, exactly.
That said, I will at least say that if what ended the match was, of course, an outside interference of a chair shot. I mean, the fact that it was a chair shot to the head, again, we don't see that too often anymore.
And he did have his hands up to be fair. But yeah, it was another chair shot to the head. And I know they always argue about, it was a gimmick chair, but I mean, that busted Cody open when they tried that the last time too. Yeah.
And Sammy, to that Tombstone pile driver spot, Sammy did look a little stunned from that point on. There were times, and there was another ringside doctor who was trying to check, waiting for them to get out of that and get into the video montage. I was trying to, I think, communicate to Sammy and just at least check if he's okay. So this was not without some battle scars. Like I said, Jericho was laying on the floor. It looked like I don't know if he landed on an arm.
It was a very awkward landing, and I hurt for Jericho. I mean, I just, I've been hearing him do all these interviews promoting his book, and he had to talk about that spot and how much it hurt to fall off the top of that cage. And he took an ugly bump where it's just like for a guy at his age to have to fall all the way from the top of that platform and just kind of splatter on the floor was not fun.
Yeah, I mean, he's 50.
Yeah. That did not look like, I hope Jericho's okay. I'm sure he's just going to be really, really sore. But you got to remember, he's working with a bum arm as well that he hasn't taken any time to heal. He keeps wrestling with it. So he's kind of banged up right now. So to take a bump like that was insane.
And I think that might have been what it is because, I mean, because Wardlow throws him from this elevated bleacher area. He just threw him to the ringside. Like, it wasn't like there was nothing that was breaking Jericho's fall. Jericho wasn't going through a table. Yeah. He wasn't being caught by guys. So all he could do was to use his arms to brace himself to fall into that concrete. So I think that, if he had a bum arm, that probably was what it was. They probably just continued to aggravate that bum arm because he had to use his arms to stop himself from face bumping onto cement.
Yeah, absolutely. That's even worse. Like, it doesn't look as impressive in a wrestling match, but you think about a guy jumping and nobody catches him, and even though it doesn't look as spectacular, it definitely hurts more.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, tables can hurt, and tables look, but they do break the fall. They do.
Yes. So they're there to do. Yeah, absolutely.
To do. So Jericho looks like he's hurt. Sammy looks like he's stunned, but MJF, Wardlow, Spears, they stand tall. That's the image they're going off with of the last match that closes the Daily Place residency that was through the pandemic. I mean, again, I have my complaints I just listed, but it was entertaining. I don't regret watching that main event. It was a very entertaining, 20-25 minute main event. But yeah, but again, the same critiques are just there of how many false finishes do we need? How many, how much extra shenanigans do we need? That's just a constant, but hey, I guess that's just the flavor that they're going to continue to serve up. And, their viewership hung with them strongly, even in all these preemptions of this past month. So what they are doing is working to the audience that's tuning in, I suppose. So.
And I will say, early parts of this match, they were working it like your basic. That was kind of the story of professional wrestling. One of the spots was Sammy Guevara hitting MJF's head against a turnbuckle, and he took a bump on it. So I was kind of thinking, they're going to do kind of an old school match, and it was connecting with people. And the way MJF traditionally works is not that high work rate style. It's more of like an 80s WWE heel. I've actually gone on kind of a Ted DiBiase kick because he's been on NXT, so I've kind of gotten him into him all over again. Just watching him and then watching MJF immediately after, there's a lot of similarities in that they don't do too much. They're more concerned with getting the crowd to hate them. And so to see MJF kind of go this direction, I don't think was entirely necessary.
Yeah, and I did leave out back to the Tombstone spot. Obviously, Sammy looked stunned. MJF did sell his knee hurting from applying that move. So again, at least rightly or wrongly, at least or legit or just working and selling, at least the brutality of doing the move was acknowledged by them, even if it is still something they kicked out of. But yeah, obviously that's one thing I like, and again, good on MJF for doing that. Is that when guys give offense, there's times when you give offense, you should react with oh, that hurt me almost as much as it just hurt you, but I'm going to do it anyways. You know, that's what I mean.
Right.
I used to always love Rob Van Dam would do that 5-star splash, and he would always take a second to grimace the fact that he just did that amazing leap onto somebody, and so you know, a lot. Again, if you're listening to this show and you haven't seen Dynamite from Wednesday night, I definitely encourage you to go watch it and watch the main event. There's a lot to watch here. There's a lot for you to make your opinion about of whether you like or don't like or agree or disagree. But it was highly entertaining and definitely some moments of that you're gonna lean back in your seat and grimace a little bit. Final thoughts, Alfred.
A lot going on. It was a good show. It was a fun show to watch. It went by very fast. I felt like the crowd was into the whole thing. I thought the crowd was the star of the show, actually. I just thought they were so great. And a couple of angles that are set up that I think are going to move forward in a very positive direction as people come back. I think AEW is doing a good job peaking in terms of where their product is going. Now we're going to get the interesting world title feud with fans there, where you're going to get that live crowd is going to buy a lot of these near falls between Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega. And then, Miro is heating up. This is now a good time for Jungle Boy is now a prominent player. So I think AEW's got all their ducks in a row successfully as they now leave Daly's place.
We got time until the 90-day no competes come up, but do you see Miro's wife pop up and being part of his presentation and they do it their own way? No more Lana Rusev, but they find their own presentation that they want to do their way. CJ and Miro.
I do. Whether or not it's Miro going into business for himself or they are planting the seeds. I do believe that whenever. Sooner rather than later, let's just say, I think we're going to see CJ Perry in AEW, and I don't think it's going to be anything like what Lana was. And I'm very interested to see more unfiltered CJ Perry, because I think a lot of people are very much aware of the behind-the-scenes drama, especially that AEW audience. They're aware of the behind-the-scenes drama between her, WWE, those third-party deals, and there's a lot that I think she can do and say in reference to get those people to get whipped into a frenzy. Yeah,
wasn't she just filming a movie with Bruce Willis? And obviously she has a she has a hell of a social media following. If she did pop up on AEW, she has a lot of eyes and followers on her that can it won't do anything. It won't hurt AEW if she ends up popping up there. DJ KS saying, so y'all aren't going to acknowledge the JRWE slip up. DJ, you need to start from the very beginning. We spent the first couple minutes on it. That was
all we talked about.
Yeah, we already.
It was unfortunate. He called it WWE Dynamite. It's the last thing you heard. I'm very interested to see the fallout. There's going to be overreaction, but that's the world we live in. It's an unfortunate error by the single greatest commentator in my lifetime and of all time to me.
For sure. Alfred, what do you got going on? What do you want to plug?
Follow me on Twitter at This Is Nasty. Just posted a new video, Pro Wrestling Bits, and I will continue to have coverage of SmackDown this Friday on Forbes. I have the AEW piece of tonight's show up right now.
Also, make sure you check that out on Forbes.com. Alfred, I'm returning to the ring. It has been since February of 2020, but my manager's license expired during the pandemic. I have renewed my license. I am returning to the ring July 9th. I got a new client. I've had RJ City in the past. He went on to do great things. I had Wardlow in the past. He's off doing great things. I have a new client in the Justin LaBar business. His name is Spencer Slade. Awesome. And I'm managing him July 9th up against Big Cass. That's right. Wow. Spencer Slade he's got a bachelor's degree. He's got a master's degree. He's an All-American. He was born deaf. Most people would just all that. Born deaf, he overcame, accomplished all he's accomplished, sports, classroom, better than most other people that are just flat out lazy. And so he has taken the opportunity, an opportunity that I worked very hard to get a main event opportunity, main event dollars, main event promotion up against Big Cass July 9th in Ross Draper, Pennsylvania. I return to the managerial circles. You can't teach that, Alfred.
That's amazing. You see, this is how you manage. This is a new age manager in Justin LaBar. He's the next generation of the Bobby Heenans. And that not only does he manage these wrestlers to get their matches and get a high profile match against a Big Cass, but now here you are in front of the wrestling audience, which is very vast, putting over a Spencer, who sounds like an amazing guy and a great story. So I can't wait to see this match, my guy.
July 9th. And of course, before that, this Friday, I'll be back on Busted Open, 10 a.m. every single Friday, Sirius XM on demand or the podcast, channel 156. Alfred, it's good to be doing it. We'll be back next Wednesday as we'll see what AEW has coming out from Miami as they are back on the road. And we'll see all the fallout from what we just talked about tonight. Again, if you enjoy this podcast, please do a like, do the comment, do the share, do all the things, whatever platform you're subscribing on. Hey, I love it. I did a call to action a few weeks ago, and I loved getting the replies on Twitter. Tweet me. Tell me how you listen to the show, what platform you're listening on or watching on. Are you with us live on a Wednesday night, or is it Thursday's commute? Is it Thursday when you're tuning your boss out? Like, let us know how you're enjoying the show. It's always fun to hear, how we're connecting with you. It's fun stuff here. All right, he's Alfred. I'm Justin. Make sure you do all the things Wrestling Inc. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.
Good night.